know.
Yeah. I think he was the only one I've ever seen that like basically like spelled out his Creative Commons license for his prototype.
Because he's the only person who would think that anyone would care.
Yeah.
Like the just like operating under the assumption that anybody's going to take your IP when you're in such a niche, like a niche within a niche within a niche, in which, as you mentioned, Andy, like GMT wants to publish more 18xx games, but like nobody's submitting anything. Like everybody within that part of the hobby, I think you said it. You had some kind of words about it, Andy. I wonder, wasn't it something about how like they kind of aren't really with the times? They're just kind of like publishing through these sort of old-fashioned channels. And I mean, to a certain extent, it might be that they've developed relationships and don't want to like, you know, move to just the new hot thing. But like really, GMT gets games published and they get them in people's hands.
Yeah. And they play test the crap out of them. We're online.
Well, they do their due diligence, TC. I mean, that's absolutely right. Sure.
But yeah,
and you go ahead, man. Say that word all you want. It's legal to say that now on like any TV. I hear it on like ABC and whatnot all the time. I mean,
yeah. Well, I would hate to make it difficult for you to edit. I mean, it's like throwing a bunch of words around I don't need to be saying, and I wouldn't say in front of my children.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
It's like, yeah. I don't know. The 18xx community needs to like occasionally stick their head out of their Yahoo group and see what modern society's doing.
Well, I'm wondering what the holdup is on their GMT's 18xx game. I mean, it's got the 500 to go. I'm just wondering if it's like it's in the queue or.
Last I saw anything on, I think it was in like our final development stage or something.
Because you were talking about that one, Andy, and you said it was like 18xx the shenanigans.
Oh yeah, 62. Oh yeah. God, it's nuts. It's not chaotic, but it's just nuts. Yeah. It's like, let's take every possible mechanism and be like, here it is in this game. It's like, you want full capitalization, you can have it. You want partial cap, go for it. You want 3 different trains that all calculate revenue differently? Yeah, let's do that. And they can merge and have the super company that runs freight trains and passenger trains. And
why not? Let's go. Yeah, I mean, just that sounds. I don't know. That just intrigues me. I don't know why. It just sounds.
Well, or you know, like one of the standard rules in most 18xx is you can't block a company from starting. So you can't like token out a hex where a company starts. Well, this game you can. You can literally token it out so that company can never start.
I think the biggest reason I try, I was listening to a podcast, and I think that 18xx game broke the podcaster. And I was like, ooh, this needs to be. I'm like, I want to check this out now.
Oh, 62?
Yeah, it was 62. I remember that. There was too many. 62. It was too crazy. I was like, yeah, I need to check this out.
Freaking bananas. But yeah, no, I really like it because, yeah, I don't know. I like the extremes of it either being like just a financial knife fight or it just being like, I threw everything in but the kitchen sink and here you go.
And here's the kitchen sink. Here you go.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, that's what I'm really hoping. My big hope on the next one is going to be I'm really hoping they either do 1880 or 1848.
Well, the last I saw, they had some prototype and they just showed like a bit of the map and it had like the Southwest on it. It's all like Amarillo, Texas, and some other stuff.
That was a long time ago. Like, I'm wondering if that all fell through somehow.
Or I don't know. It's so funny. GMT is just like they are so backlogged on stuff. I just think they're trying to get stuff through the printer and it's just going crazy. Which is, I guess, is a good problem to have.
Yeah,
I know they're still working out. I know they're still working out their website and their ordering system. They're still tweaking that a bit. I know that he's been on a few newsletters saying, "Yeah, we're still trying to get this done." And actually, the first group of people we had to work on it, we got rid of. We got the second group, and they're going to try to make it better.
Yeah. Well, in true, I mean, and I'm sure like people like because GMT has a warehouse like. There's got to be a fair amount of people that are under this weird delusion that GMT is like, has hundreds of employees.
Yeah, I think it's like 5 people, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, Clay doing Capstone. Everyone's like, oh, it's a company. He must have lots of people. It's like, no, dude. He is like unloading those pallets and packaging them himself. And like begging his wife for help in the process.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, it's a good problem to have, though.
No, it could be worse for sure.
Yeah. So where's Trent?
He should be on the way.
Okay, I haven't. Did he post something?
He had said that he was going to be a little bit late.
Oh, okay.
And I think he had said he had some things to take care of. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
But I did finally get done reading the rules to Hannibal at Hamilcar, so I'm interested. That sounds crazy fun.
Oh, speaking of crazy fun, that Meltwater was a very interesting game.
Heck, I love
that. I'm sure you guys talked about it last week a bit, but man, I've never played a game that was a battle royale. That was holy crap! That game was bananas.
Antiquity gives me a similar feel to that game, and that it's like shrinking your possibilities of what you can do.
It was just like, here comes nuclear radiation again. Oh God! Okay. I'm gonna press gang these guys. I'm gonna threaten your guys. Oh, we're gonna shoot our guys. We both die. Oh, and then we get some extra radiation. Like,
more radiation.
This game is wrong.
Oh, especially the tactic I ended up trying to do to Trent. It didn't work, but I'm like, if this works, it's gonna be freaking hilarious.
Did you see that? Did you see the picture I put up? Where like.
Yeah,
everything was like there's like basically 3 hospitable places left on the entire Antarctica.
Yeah. No, I had it to where like if you're playing the US, you have like those 2 guys that start off in like the west little like peninsula there. They got cut off from radiation and they were just sitting there and they couldn't move out. And nobody could move in to save them. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, what's gonna be freaking hilarious is if all of the mainland is destroyed and you die horribly, and like my 2 guys are just sitting on the peninsula because you couldn't get to them to kill them either because they were just cut off.
Did it go down that way?
No, unfortunately, like it was really close. We ended up calling it 3 rounds later because it was obvious I was gonna win that, but no, like I was like, oh no, too bad. There's the radiation marker. They're gonna die.
The game we played, it came down to as the Russians, I managed to kill the Americans, get them out, and then there was me in like a neutral because we weren't able to press game this last little group of people, and we played the game out, and it turned out the only survivors were the neutrals. If we would have played the game out, right? It's like okay, they're the ones that's left. Okay, sweet.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah, no, it's such a fun game. I had a lot of fun in that. Like, I managed to actually capture one of Trent's supply depots.
Yeah, it was.
I chased him off of it and snagged it and ran off with it. And I don't know. I even love it in like the rules. It specifically has a described win condition if you're like the 1 hex left, like everything is dead but with your guy on it. It's in the rules. It says, "Congratulations, you win by spitting on your opponent's grave."
Yeah. If you go to the Hollenspiel website, they actually have like the designer has like 3 articles on making the game. Have you read those?
I didn't.
Really fascinating reading. It's really cool. He talks a lot about other games that inspired it and what he was going for, and basically it's a really cool read. But Meltwater is just one of those games I'm not entirely sure who I could recommend it for. It's like Jesus.
I was initially going to like make a joke when I posted Trent and I playing it, but then I was like, you know what, this might not.
Yeah,
we were playing Meltwater, and then we followed it up by This Guilty Land. So I really wanted to post something like, it's a dreary day outside, so we thought a little gaming would improve our moods. Why did we pick these 2?
Well, I followed up Meltwater with that Aztec game, that Tenochtitlan, whatever.
Oh, Teotihuacan or whatever it is.
Yeah, and so I was just like super stoked going from like this super aggressive 2-player beatdown game, and he was like, "Oh, we're gonna play a game with beheadings, human sacrifices and stuff." And I had a game where I didn't even roll the dice. I was like, "This is probably a good game, but I feel kind of let down at the same time." Right? I was like, I have to play that game again and get in the right mindset. But I could safely say you don't want to play Meltwater before you play that thing.
Yeah, I think that'll be largely based on their personalities, though. Like, if we had our guy who used to game with us that lives in Seattle, Jake. Like, if I made him play Meltwater, I think he would be very happy to play Teotihuacan right after that.
Oh, this is over with. Thank God. Let's play something good.
Yes. that would be the case. Yes. No, I thought Teotihuacan was actually pretty good. Like, it was, it is super a Euro, but I thought it was like the best of the Euros that came out that year for sure.
Yeah.
At least the one I played. It had some nice puzzly aspects to it. But yeah, no human sacrifices.
Yeah, I know. And I wanted like a soccer team where the losing team gets completely beheaded. I was just a little disappointed.
Oh, they got it through the horizontal loop.
Oh
God,
I see Trent's face. Oh, I am not the same.
Hey, Trent.
So this back here is my role-playing game shelf. It's partially full, and then behind me is some of my board games.
Yeah. Nice.
I have a window and some bugs.
Bugs? Where are the bugs?
Right back over here. I got my butterflies that I imported from various places because I think having dead bugs on my wall is awesome.
You're all Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, I know. That would be great.
My brother, being like, he majored in Japanese and worked over there before he became a lawyer. I went into his bathroom and he had like kanji, like letters over everything. And I'm like, what does that one mean? He's like, poop.
Nice.
I'm like, what's that one?
Somebody,
like, shower.
Somebody must have got that for you as a gift, Andy.
Oh, that'd be awesome. No, although apparently in his Japanese major, he did a speech and found out apparently there is no consensus of a single word to represent a plunger.
Really?
For like cleaning out your toilets. Yeah. Like my brother tried to bring it up in his speech and the teacher was like, what are you talking about? So he had to demonstrate like the motion and everything. She's like, oh, this. And he's like, that's the word for it. She's like, I think so. And like the TA was in there who was Japanese. Is like, no, we call it this in my family. And they went around to the whole department asking them what they call it.
Nice.
And then finally they asked this female teacher what she called it, and she rattled something off, and like this other professor busted out laughing because it translated as something like turtle that cleans out the cave.
Nice. That's turtle that cleans out the cave. Yes.
Like, something a child would call it.
Yes. I'm about to get a colonoscopy. What is this thing? Oh, you mean the turtle that cleans out the cave?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, he had interesting times. He ended up being drugged to the ER once because he tried to help a drunk guy.
Jeez.
What's funny is they're like, what's his name? He's like, I don't know. They're like, he's like, can't you check his wallet? They're like, no, we can't check his wallet. So he just like reached down, turned the guy over, and pulled out his wallet.
Nice. Are we ready for this?
I'm ready. Let's go. Rock and roll.
Here we go. Locked and loaded. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to The Long View, a podcast about board. Wow! Oh my goodness, this is a great start. Great start. Oh, The Long View.
And on The Long View, we have two special guests. We've got Trent and Andy. Hi, Trent and Andy. How's it going?
Oh goodness! Well, you can check out a botched, not quite finished episode of Longview that we recorded on Tuesday night. Hopefully, hopefully it'll end up getting finished, and we'll be able to put it together and post it. But my brain is still 2 nights in the past. So coming to you, broadcasting from 2 days ago. I'm the host of not the Longview, but the Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, Joe Sallin. I'm being joined tonight by the full regular co-host panel. That is 4 in total. That's including myself. First of all, Andrew Dennison. How you doing tonight, Andy?
Pretty good. It's like slightly less freezing in our state.
Yeah, you can actually go outside without the snot freezing before it even gets out of your nose. It just
legitimately, I noticed yesterday because I had to snow blow stuff and whatnot. I looked at my face in the mirror and it looked like I had a sunburn because of the snow that had kicked up and instantaneously froze the outer layers of my skin.
Yeah. Well, it's good that we're finally starting to thaw a little bit here because we have been in the midst of deadly cold temperatures. I know that my brother's girlfriend is teaching kindergarten, and they have had since last, I believe, Monday, they have only had 1 day of school that lasted 2 hours, and they have literally had 4 days get canceled this week.
Oh, that really? So they can't. I know everyone canceled Tuesday and Wednesday, but.
Yeah. So my school canceled Tuesday, Wednesday. I think, is that the case with Des Moines, Trent, or did Sarah also get canceled today?
No, we only had Wednesday out.
Holy crap! Not even Tuesday or Thursday at all.
Both where my wife teaches and the district my kids go to only had Wednesday off.
Wow. Yeah, no, we had Tuesday, Wednesday, and a late start on Thursday. Yeah, today.
They literally
because you guys are weak.
Week. Well, apparently the Iowa State students are also weak. Iowa State University, really close to where we were recording from here in central Iowa. Or I don't say we are recording. I'm recording. Andy's recording from there. Trent's recording from there. TC, it's not as cold for you out there. Anyway.
What the heck's going on? That's a nice 40 degrees out here. What's going on outside, man?
Shut up! Shut up!
That's okay. You could have my measles outbreak that's going up here in Washington State.
Yeah, you get that instead. Yeah. Anyway, Iowa State University canceled classes full day on Wednesday, and I believe did not even resume until noon on today, Thursday. So it's when the college cancels class, it's big. My whole time down at Truman State University in Missouri, we had 1 day in the 4 years that I was there. That was canceled. So, and that was for that snow apocalypse.
They only had 1 day, and it was raining ice for hours.
Mm-hmm.
2 days later, I tried to go to class and went up a ramp. I got halfway and slid all the way back down.
It's always weird. It's a really surreal feeling when you don't actually get into a wreck in that situation. You're just ooh.
No, it wasn't this was me personally with boots.
You was the human being. Okay, all right.
It was even worse because I grabbed the railing to steady myself, and that did not stop me from sliding. My hand just slid down.
I'm pretty sure that's a level in Super Mario, Andy, where you jump. You slide like Mario just jumps on his butt and just. So, well, anyway. It's finally starting to thaw here, and we are going to be talking to you about board games because that's what we do here on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. First, we're going to review a game each. Then we will talk about today's topic, one that yours truly started to talk about, and it actually developed into an interesting discussion on the concept of using a flight, flying somewhere, like a plane flight, as a metaphor for board game experiences, viewing the gamers involved as either pilots or passengers. So sit back and enjoy the ride once we get to our topic. And then after that, we will hype games. We always look forward to something. And so we'll end on a nice positive, what are we hoping for from our future plays. Before we get started with the episode, thanks to our sponsor, Game Surplus. Bring the world of board games to you at GameSurplus.com, an online retailer with the type of service, the type of friendliness, and the type of loyalty from a community that knows what to expect in terms of great customer service, excellent, as well as excellent prices and a nice shipping threshold that is very meetable. You can check them out at GameStarPlus.com. You also get some good deals if you take a look at later on during some of our transitions. I post about the podcast picks. And so I do continue to cultivate that. So we can get some more of those added. And if you ever have interest in a game, shoot me an email, goodboardugly@gmail.com. And I'll throw games onto the podcast picks for you. If I think that the podcast picks them, I suppose. But you know what? You're part of the podcast too if you're listening to this. So thanks for doing so. Shout out to everybody who's been a loyal listener for multiple episodes, and to everybody who's new. We have, according to the downloads on the metrics that I do not check, but every time that I go to post an episode, I get confronted with them. We have been growing, which is something I didn't exactly expect. But welcome to all of you that are here for the first time. And I appreciate you for dealing with the unsolicited reviews that I throw in your face before every one of these podcasts, something that makes it so I am motivated to edit the podcast. And today's unsolicited review on this episode, I'm not 100% sure what it will be, but I'm thinking it might be a game called Into the Breach on the Nintendo Switch. We've had some interesting discussions about some of the games that have been released recently, just going on with kind of some of the guys in our local chat. And so anyway, I hope that you are dealing with that part of the podcast well.
Well, don't worry about it, Joe. If you want, me and Carissa can record our thoughts on Sea of Thieves sometime for you. You can throw it up there, just add fuel to the fire.
Actually, yeah, we want to add some unsolicited reviews. I'll throw one of those on there.
Okay,
I mean, yeah, the more the merrier, right? Yeah, as long as nobody's asked you for them, though. So I suppose I can't technically ask you for them because that would be soliciting a review.
That would be, yeah. Well, I'll think of something unsolicited. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. No requests accepted for the unsolicited review segment. Unfortunately, that's betraying. That would be a betrayal.
I want to do it.
Andy, I didn't hear what you said. It didn't come through. TC,
Well, you said I want to do an unsolicited review on spices. I really like rosemary.
Oh, rosemary. Actually, I have done unsolicited reviews of kombucha. So you know what? We could do spices. We could also do an unsolicited review of an office chair. I mean, it could be anything, just so long as nobody has ever asked you for a review of it, or you've never entertained the idea because somebody requested it. I say this because otherwise. People who don't want to listen to the unsolicited reviews will then be like, ooh, I know how to break this. I'm going to request all of them at once.
Good luck trying to predict that.
So what we're saying here is we're going to get episodes the length of the Secret Cabal, but not actually increase the time we talk about board games.
Yeah, or actually increase the quality of what we talk about. Yeah, I see that, yeah.
Well, it's now reached that threshold where if I look at the metrics and how much the downloads have increased recently, unless we've got some Google bots that are doing some really good work for us, in which case, thanks to all the Google bots out there listening right now, then most people that listen to the show, or at least not most, but pretty close to half, are accustomed to an unsolicited review. I've been slapping those on there now for a good little while, ever since I started doing the editing again. So. Anyway, thanks for dealing with that. And I do promise that we will talk about board games. And we're going to get that kicked off with, first, a 2-player game that I am very excited for. I was in the rule book of this game recently. It is a Martin Wallace game, and TC is going to be telling you all about it.
Oh, sweet. I guess I'm up first. So, yes, I will be talking about Martin Wallace's Lincoln. Now, I picked up Lincoln. I was actually considering MOA 2. But then I asked you guys, and you're like, nah, I'll sell you mine for $14. You're like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't get this thing. So I picked up Lincoln instead, which was on sale. And
which is the cost of shipping, by the way. Nothing wrong with MOA, but yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot of enthusiasm I was feeling for this game. So, and Lincoln was there, and I've heard mixed things about it. I heard that in its previous iteration before it was published, that there was that was broken in typical Martin Wallace fashion. So I'm like, let's check it out. It was on the discount shelf, so pick up. So what is Lincoln? Lincoln is a 2-player war game that instead of using deck construction like A Few Acres of Snow does or Mythotopia, it's a deck deconstruction. And how that works is you have a deck of cards, you draw 5 or 6, depending on if you're the north or the south, and you play a card. First of all, you have to discard cards. And if it's anything but a 1 army, that card gets permanently removed from the game. So you're going through this deck, and then every time you have to shuffle, you shuffle in like a small pile of cards. And if you're the South, you're shuffling crappier cards. Because the whole point of this game is for the North to beat you. And the North has to be super aggressive, because one of the first rules is if the North doesn't score at least 2 victory points by the first shuffle, then the North loses. By the second shuffle, I think they have to score 4. And I think by the third shuffle, they have to score 12 points. And you get points in various ways, by taking over certain territories, by moving the blockade marker north, because not blockade marker up, because not only does that increase the victory points, it also limits the hand draw of the southern player. And so you're playing, and so the North always has to be aggressive, and the South just has to hang on. And if the South can hang on and prevent the North from scoring enough points, or they can get European support all the way down, they win. The combat's really interesting. You move your units, and the units are 1, 2, and 3 chits. You declare a battle, and then you add up the numbers. You throw down a card with a star number on it, and you flip over, and the highest number wins. Now, but when you calculate casualties, everybody loses something. The winner loses half rounded down. The loser loses half rounded up. So that means you want your big 3 armies surrounded by 1s, because if you send like all your 3 armies out, you're guaranteed to lose 1.
Oof.
Yeah, and so you got these into the North can like do navy moves. It's really quite an interesting game. I tried to break the game like they did in the previous iterations. The way you do it is the South puts a whole bunch of armies right north of Washington, and they move them in as quick as possible. And if the South can take over Washington, they automatically win the game. They fixed it by giving Washington a +10 defense. I tried that maneuver and I lost. So I think they fixed it, but I haven't played enough to really find out. My biggest complaint with the game, honestly, is the artwork. I really wish they would have used like historical photos or something. The artwork's okay. It works. It's just
it's like the same as Few Acres of Snow.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. It's
same artist, I believe, as the original Tree Frog games.
Yeah,
like, Few Acres of Snow had, like I don't know. I liked the Few Acres of Snow, and honestly, TC, I didn't look enough through this one to really see, but I do feel like they kind of recycle a lot of the same. Like it's almost like they took one large scene, and every card is just like a small subset of that one scene, which is a little bit.
Yeah, it's like they took the big cover, they took sections of the cover painting, but it's a minor complaint. I mean, it's fine.
I love the artwork in A Few Acres of Snow, dude. Like the way that they captured that sort of look of a French militia that's like sort of, as opposed to a British militia, which looks like he would be caught with his pants down in any real fight. That French militia looks like he's about to go through what Leonardo DiCaprio did in The Revenant.
Yeah, I think my biggest problem is that I've played like let's see here, Freedom, the Underground Railroad, and what's another Civil War game I have. Anyway, they used more historical artwork.
Yeah, you're a GMT fanboy as well. Like GMT really does use historical artwork, and just occasionally Roger McGowan does some artwork. Some of the stuff to sort of pull it together, but it's always very small chip artwork and not the centerpiece.
Like Fort Sumner had really interesting. They used historical artwork and stuff. So I kind of wish they would have went that route with it, but that's okay. My overall impression is it's a good 2-player game. I like, I know me and Trent have often talked about how Martin Wallace seems to have fallen off the wagon lately, where he has good ideas, but they don't seem entirely play tested well enough. And I've always countered that a bad Martin Wallace game is always an interesting play, at least. And I really like this deck deconstruction mechanic that this game utilizes. I think it'd be really interesting to used in other games. But as it stands, Lincoln does seem to be a very solid 2-player card war game thing with a slight spin to make it a little bit different than A Few Acres of Snow. So I can hesitantly recommend it. I've only played it 2 or 3 times, but so far it's been holding up, and I've been getting a lot of enjoyment out of it.
Happy to hear that, dude. Very cool.
We'll see if Moa hoes up whenever I get it sometime down the road.
Yeah.
And just to change the topic a little bit, I got Keyforge keys. Ooh,
those are metal,
keys,
right?
Look.
Clink them, dude. Let's hear the sound. What does it sound like?
Listen to that.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I had to brag about that. I actually won a tournament. So there we go.
Kaboom. Whoa, TC won a tournament. That's right. And that's what you were doing last Thursday. So, and we can expect that for next Thursday potentially, or as long as there is no product, are you going to be?
It's going to be every second Thursday. This next Thursday is going to be up in the air because, again, product. But we'll see. I don't know. I'm kind of playing it by ear. But anyway.
Very cool.
Lincoln, give it a shot. It'd be a game. I'd really be interested to hear what you guys think about it, to be honest. I think it'd be right up your alley a bit.
Well, it's certainly
you should do a worst deck night. Have everybody bring their crappiest deck, and that's their entry fee, and then you randomly redistribute them.
Yeah, that's how I won my keys. Is I brought the worst deck, and no one could do anything with it. So yeah,
that's such a hilarious concept, Trent. Like everybody's just like, this deck sucks.
Yeah, it was unanimous. My deck was absolutely the crappiest one out there because it was like, yeah, that guy just ate it so bad. I actually got a decent one. I'm like, this is your worst deck? Okay, I just mopped the floor with it. So yeah. No, that's the only way I can apparently win tournaments. Is not playing with a good deck, but playing with someone else's crappy one, which I don't think is honestly a big surprise to anyone who listens to this podcast.
Well, being able to make some lemonade out of lemons like TC, I mean, I'm not surprised, dude. Like you can certainly make some interesting things happen. So that's what keeps us on our toes. Yep. All right. Let's now hear from the initial thoughts on a new game from Andy.
Yeah, so I had a chance to play with Trent SpaceCorp, which has been getting quite the buzz on the Twitter and other podcasts that I tend to listen to. Mm-hmm. Just kind of a brief overview. So SpaceCorp is a new GMT game out. It's about exploring the solar system. Kind of the two main shticks with it is there's actually 3 boards. So the first board basically starts you out in Earth and near Earth stuff. So like Moon, Mars kind of things. Once you're done with that, which either happens based on these contracts you can fulfill for points, once so many of them are used, or the deck for the air runs out, you switch to the next one. Which then takes you to, I think, that it goes up to Pluto and stuff, right?
The second board goes up to Pluto to the solar system.
Right. And so that's kind of opens up that outer solar system area. And then you finally go to interstellar flight and doing that. During all of it, you're doing somewhat similar things in that you're exploring areas to get chits. You're building factories on them. You're using these factories for various effects to help you move, build, produce, that kind of thing. The way the mechanism itself works is you have cards, and these cards tell you like move 3 or research 2 or whatever. And that's basically how much value you can do of it. So it's this really pretty slick, easy mechanism as to, what you want to do. What cards do you have? Okay, you can do this with them. You also get a little bit of tableau building with it that you can put into it. And so there's that. Now, kind of my initial thoughts about this and what I was thinking, I was really curious to see how this played out, because I had heard from a lot of positive buzz about it, but then I heard a little bit of negative here and there too. And the negative was more in line with kind of what I was wondering about it. And basically the name of the game and the initial description of the game kind of like bills it as being kind of like an economic game. Mm-hmm. It's not. It really just is not. It's an economic game the same way Arkwright is a stock game, i.e. money is points, really, when you get down to it. I would say it's still somewhat of kind of a Euro hand management kind of game, and it's quite fun. It is, I think, a little more on the light side of your typical one, your lighter side of medium. I wouldn't say it's super light. The one nice thing about it too is that with those 3 boards is you have kind of an ease into the rules. So to play the first board, the rules teach is pretty quick, and then you do that, and then when you switch to the next board, there's not a whole lot that progresses from the first board to the second board other than your points and your tableau. There's a couple other things you can do. You can kind of start over there, and then you don't have to reteach the whole game. You're just like, okay, here are the new things. And then you switch to the next board. Okay, here are the new things. And there's that. I really enjoyed playing it, but I think you need to go into it with the mindset of it being kind of more of a hand management sort of Euro kind of thing. I would not call it an economic game in the way I tend to, describe and identify economic games. But that being said, it was a lot of fun. The one thing that might turn off some people, and I've seen a little bit of this, is there's a fair amount of randomness in it, in the terms of when you explore, you have explore tiles that come up, and those can be random here or there. There's kind of random in terms of what cards come up and what you can get a hold of, what kind of colonies come up. But it's not bad. It was a very enjoyable game. I definitely want to play it more and explore it more. But yeah, I think kind of the description it has and kind of the name it has kind of is almost like an artist graphic design sort of oops, in that it kind of gives you an idea of the game being something it's not. And as long as you go in expecting what it is, I think it's actually a pretty fun game. But if you buy this expecting Arkwright in space, you're going to be disappointed by it.
What if you buy it expecting Terraforming Mars meets The Colonists?
Terraforming Mars meets what?
The Colonists.
And that's not. I don't think that's a good comparison at all.
Okay.
Well, the thing that gets me about this one is I've played a lot of Butterfield's games. Is it John Butterfield? He's a very prolific war game designer, and he's done some really good stuff, but they're very war gamey. And my biggest fear is like people going into this expecting a traditional war game in space, and from what I can tell, it is not.
Yeah.
No, there's no elements of a war game at all in it, I would say. And then I think I really think most people don't go into it expecting that. I think people go into it expecting it to be a heavier economic game than it really is. But if you don't go in with that expectation, I think you've got a really good game there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm thinking so far of it, but I need a few plays to kind of really tease out what I'm gonna, how I feel about it in general.
Sure.
But
what do you think, Trent? You disagreed with my statement. I was just thinking, like, I see you switching from one era to the next, and that's where I think The Colonist, and then the game itself to me appeared like Terraforming Mars in a way, but you totally disagreed with that, and you have every right to do. You have more information about the game than me.
I played the game multiplayer and solo. I'd say it feels like a very much an efficiency problem kind of game. Mm-hmm. My friend Jake, who is good at such games, I think would be very, very, very good at this game. I would not want to play him at it. I think he would dominate with this game. I really do. This seems to me to be like a Jake game. If you know what I'm talking about, guys.
Like really multiplayer solitaire type game?
It's not multiplayer solitaire, but it's identify the most efficient path and exploit it like crazy.
Yeah, in a sense, it's kind of actually a race game.
Yeah, it's definitely a race game. That's definitely what I would describe.
There's a set of contracts to fulfill, and once somebody does it, nobody else can. So it's kind of like, I want to get here, I want to do this. I want to get here, I want to do this. And so, for me, I had a very sort of frustrating era too, because I just kind of misread some things. So this was totally on me. But then by the time I got myself straightened out, it seemed like every time I went to complete a contract, which is basically a goal that gets you points, I was one step behind everybody else doing those. And so I got trash
Skunk.
in Era 2. Because it took me a while to get there and everyone else was being more efficient than me. And I'd be like, okay, well, I'll go do, okay, no, you got there first. Okay, I'll go do, no, okay, you got there first. And so there is that. But I think it's a very enjoyable game, but I think you need to go into it either try not to have any expectations initially or read up a little bit on it and make sure you're expecting what you're going to get. Because I think if you do that, it'll be an enjoyable experience. I wouldn't say it's multiplayer solitaire because, but it's more
it's not
of
multiplayer solitaire. No, it's just.
Oh no. The interaction is more like
puzzle.
Yeah. First.
You're making it sound pretty interesting to me, actually. Like, this is what's strange is when I hear such positive things about SpaceCorp, I've been just considering the sources and whether or not, the same things that entertain me or what entertain those individuals.
Well,
and I
would like this game.
Interesting.
The only thing, I don't know how you would feel about the exploration randomness aspect, because that can end up being oh God, I need this. Oh God, can I not draw the freaking thing I need? Or like an error.
And sometimes you'll just flip a tile that's like absolutely perfect for what you're hoping for, and it feels like you've taken a huge leap over everybody else. That also happens.
Oh, yay, another mining world. Woohoo.
Or in my case, yay, another water world.
Yeah. Or there are some tiles that are like negative. There's not a lot of them, but it's like, I think it was in Era 2, I swear to God, I hit everyone. Like, I had 3 of those hit me, and it was like, lose 2 points and draw again. Oh, look, I gained 2 points, so I accomplished nothing.
Nice. Well, those things happen, right? And as Mur says in our chat, space is random. Deal with it.
Space is random.
No, that's absolutely true. And yeah, you can't really have like fully deterministic things in an exploration aspect of our game, or it doesn't really work. But that is a source of randomness people need to be aware of going into it. So,
yeah.
Anyway, that's kind of what I'm thinking of SpaceCorp, but I definitely want to play it some more and kind of finalize my thoughts on it.
Well, now I want to play it, and I didn't expect to. So
my copy's on the way still, so we'll see. I'm waiting to play it. I'm very curious about it.
And of course, TC has a copy on the way because it's a GMT game. But I would say, TC, it doesn't really look like other GMT games. There's like the artwork here reminds me more of Terraforming Mars. If Terraforming Mars was done a little better.
No. Yeah.
See?
Yeah, like Terraforming Mars, it had better consistent artwork.
Yeah.
It would be SpaceCorp.
Kind of more like their dominant species line, the non-war game, non-traditional GMT production.
And the weird part is, like, it's weird. In some ways, it's very thematic. In some ways, it's really not thematic at all. Because when you get your cards, like, I found myself doing what a couple other podcasters talked about, which was, like, the graphic design is awesome on the cards. Like, it's really big, like, move 5, research 2. And then, like, in small letters above it is, like, what it's supposed to be based on. It's like, you got an ion drive. I'm like, no, I didn't. I got a move 3 card. Like, if you know what I mean. So, like, the names and the artwork's nice, but it almost fades into the background, at least on the cards of it.
Very interesting. Now that I want to play it, let's move on to hearing from Trent, who's going to be letting us know about the game that our game group has been calling Sagrada Azul.
And that's a perfect name for this. I'm going to talk about Azul Stained Glass of Sintra, which is like Azul the Return or Azul the Sequel, whatever you want to call it.
Azul the Reckoning.
Azul the Reckoning. Azul Hard with a Vengeance. Okay, it's just like the original Azul. It's created by Michael Kiesling. It's a game for 2 to 4 players. If you played the original, you're going to feel very familiar with this game. It's going to feel familiar. For those who haven't played it, the basic core of both Azul and this one is there's a little ring of circles out on the board. And on each of those circles, there are 4 tiles. On your turn, and the tiles can be various colors. On your turn, you're going to choose one of those circles. Choose one of the color of tiles on that circle. It could be 1 tile, 2 tile, 3 tiles, 4 tiles, whatever. Take those, and the rest go in the middle of all the circles. Then in the next player can do the same, except then they have the option to choose out of the middle. Choose all the tiles of one color out of the middle. When you take tiles, though, you're putting them on your board in some sort of arrangement, and the arrangement depends on which version of Azul you're playing. But essentially what you're doing is you're effectively trying to create patterns on your board in both games, and those patterns score points, and whoever scores the most points is the big winner. So I'm going to talk about this assuming you played Azul, because I think that's the fairest way to review this. And I think Azul has been very commonly played by a lot of people, so I'm just going to assume that you played Azul. Okay, so the big difference with this is obviously your player board. The main part of the game is identical, other than the tiles look a little different. They look more like like Jolly Ranchers now, rather than Starbursts. I feel like a candy comparison, because now they're just like solid color and kind of semi-transparent.
Yes, they're like gummies almost.
They went from Starburst to Jolly Ranchers.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah.
So your board can.
Someone post that was like, I will not eat the game pieces. I will not eat the game pieces.
Yeah, I mean, they look like hard candies. They really do. So instead of your normal board, whereas in Azul you had a 5x5 square, this time you have 7 columns on your board that are in somewhat random order, semi-random order, mostly random order. And these 7 columns, so they come as 7 distinct pieces that you line up on your board. And so and each one has 5 spots on it. So you have 35 spaces with which to put your pieces. You also have a little pawn that starts on the leftmost column of the board. When you take tiles, you decide which of the columns you want to put it on. But it has to be either the column where the pawn is or one of the columns to the right of it. They all have to go in the same column. Some of the spaces on your board have a particular color already in place, and you have to match that color. I mean, all of the spaces have colors, although there are a few wild spaces, and the tiles you take have to match a color. If you choose a column that's further to the right, you have to move your pawn to there. You can no longer choose columns to the left unless it comes around to your turn and you choose to skip your turn and reset your pawn to the farthest left column. Okay, straightforward enough. So you're basically putting pieces on the board, moving your pawn to the right. When it gets too far to the right, you eventually have to move it back to the left and lose a turn doing so. When a column gets filled completely with pieces, and that usually means it's a mix of 2 or 3 different colors of pieces, you take one of the pieces off of that column and put it down at the bottom, and it's going to score a few points. It tells you at the bottom how many points it's going to score, but you also score points for every column to the right that you previously completed. And you can tell this because it has a little piece down at the bottom. Because, as soon as you complete a column, you've moved a piece down, so you know which ones you've completed. So I move a piece down off of this column, it scores 2, and I've already completed a couple columns to the right that are worth 1 each. So I immediately score 4 points. Then you strip all the other pieces off that column, flip it over to the other side. Has a completely different row on it with different colors, and you keep playing. Yeah. The second time you're going to flip it, instead of flipping it, you just remove it and throw it out of the game. So now you only have 6 columns to work with. Other than that, it basically plays like Azul. Other than that, there is an in-game scoring session where you effectively, depending on the tiles you brought down to the bottom, you can score some bonus points. So basically, you're really rewarded for completing the same column twice, in essence, is what it really boils down to. There's also, rather than scoring a batch of negative points each round, as you do in Azul, the negative points become cumulative, and they get worse and worse and worse. I found that the negative points in this one have a lot more impact than the negative points in regular Azul, which is a very rare thing. Most of the time, you're just taking like 1 negative point in Azul. This one is very common to end up taking like 12 at the end of the game. That's just because they changed how the scoring works. Joe took, I don't even want to know how many negative points in the game I played with him. It was a lot.
Yeah, there was a bit of confusion about whether or not my penultimate turn would have totally been different had I understood that I couldn't read. Yeah, anyway, it wasn't whatever. I took a dump in this game. I think I had 1/3 of the next highest player's points.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. I think that this game is a slightly more complex version of Azul, but not so much that I couldn't quickly introduce it to like anyone who played Azul a few times can quickly pick this up. I just think there's a little more to think about. It still has the same pretty pieces like the regular Azul does. I I actually think I like the pieces in this one better than the base game one. The pieces are not nice in the base game, but something about this makes me like them better. I think given a choice, I would consistently choose this over normal Azul. But they're both in the very much the filler game category for me. I view Azul as a filler, and I view this as a filler too, but a slightly better filler. So pick that for what you will.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. I enjoy it. The thing that makes it a little tougher for me to recommend it is, like, with Azul, it's got this sort of, like, very I just have this feeling like we all need kind of the same thing at the same time, and so that makes us much more just, like, in the same, like, on the same wavelength. Whereas, like, in Azul Stained Glass, like you mentioned, Trent, not only is there 8 different, there's 16 different possibilities for, like, what you could have in any one row of your thing, but also, like, you're going to be flipping around as the game goes on. So I mean, it's more of like what I would call an Azul, where there are many more variables at any given time that make it more difficult for you to really see at a glance, or even just assume what other players are going for. I do kind of like some of the elements, like the way that your restriction, you're a little bit more restricted where you can place the tiles. And I do think that works out nicely in this format. I also like the way that the tiles that fall on the floor are sort of cumulative, and they're not, that way you get penalized, for the entire game, not for just having a single really bad round. So I do appreciate that aspect. And I also really like the way that every round you've got a specific tile you're going for. So those are the things I really like. But as I said before, the main thing that I really love about Azul is how I can teach that game, and people know what I'm going for as an experienced player pretty well right at the start of the game as well. That doesn't necessarily happen so much in Azul Stained Glass, but still not too bad. Andy, TC?
Oh, I haven't played the new one. I've played Azul quite a bit. I've heard mixed things about this one. A few people prefer this one a few bit more, and at least the store game group I go to actually prefer the original over this one. And I think because it may be easier to teach, I don't know. I haven't had a chance to play it, but I do appreciate the positive feedback, and it does make me want to try it now.
Yeah, I would say that it's definitely worth trying. Like, especially if you've already played Azul. Would you say, Trent, if you've already played Azul, this is, like, I feel like this got taught to you in 30 seconds.
Yeah, you can teach it to someone who knows how to play Azul very quickly. I mean, it relies 80% of the rules are the same. The only thing it changes is your board and the use of the little pawn, and that is the same game. Mm-hmm. I just like the decision. I like the decisions in this better. So
fair enough.
I don't know.
There's more of them. They're wider. It's a wider game. Azul is much more narrow. All right, so that was Azul Stained Glass of Sintra, the follow-up to the Spiel des Jahres game that nobody complained about for once, Azul. And I'm going to round it off here with a Euro game called Gugong. That's spelled Gugong, which is, from what I understand, the Mandarin name for the actual Forbidden Palace. Gugong is...
Got in rubble. I remember that.
Andy, actually a bit of a historian of that Three Kingdoms period. I'm not sure if this is anywhere. I think this is post Three Kingdoms period, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like in the 1500s.
Like, there was a big snafu, like in the cultural appropriation-y thing, because apparently when they had the artwork, like, of the people, they had them wearing clothes of, like, the wrong dynasty and, like, of a style that you would not be allowed to wear in the actual Forbidden City and stuff. So, like, native Chinese people and stuff got kind of ticked off at them. And then I think that's when they ultimately changed the name rather than, like, recommissioning all the artwork.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. Well, I got the, for Gugong, I actually got the deluxe edition, which I was inspired to write an entire thing, put a write-up up on Board Game Geek under Gugong. So if you want to hear my thoughts on the production, check that out. Just know that I think that it is an exceptional deluxe edition of a game that I have very much enjoyed, except that the box sleeve is like it's made so that the game just slides right out the bottom if you're reading it. So, like, you pick up the game, look at it, read it, and whoop, it's just like, oh, fortunately, I did that on top of carpet, but that could certainly happen on top of hardwood. It sounds like that has happened to some people. It's a trap. Be careful. So Gugong is, like I said, a euro. In this game, you're going to start with a set hand of 4 cards. It will always be the same 4 cards depending on player order. The first player will always get the same 4 cards. These are numbered 1 through 9. Also on top of that, you'll take cards, shuffle them, and then put them out on 7 spots on the board. These 7 spots are each a different action. To be able to take an action, you have to play a card down that is higher than the card that's already there. These cards also have actions on them, and as long as you're playing an action card that is higher than what's previously there, you'll be able to take the action on the card, which many times is as powerful as taking a full action from the board, together with the action from the board space you take. You can also pay these you have like servants that you can pay that are like the money in the game. You can pay 2 servants to take the action, even if you're playing a lower card or an equal card. You can also discard a card from your hand, thus reducing your actions for the round to be able to take an action as well. You start the game with 4 cards in your hand, which are actions. Every time you play a card, you're then going to take whatever card was previously there, put it in your own discard pile, face down. At the end of the round, you'll compare your discard pile to everybody else's discard pile, and there are these 3 dice that get rolled, and these 3 dice have an equal distribution of the numbers 1 through 9 for D6s somehow. That's because each number comes up twice on D6s. And the way they did it is interesting. It gave me cold sweats when I saw that there was a die that had 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9. Because I was like, why would there ever be a reason for a die to have no 4, 5, and 6, no normalizing factors? Well, it makes sense here in Gugong. You're trying to match as many numbers in your discard pile as you can to those cards that are out, and then whoever wins that scores like 3 points and gets to advance on one of the spots on the board. The 7 different actions on the board range from a simple track you have to advance on, and if you don't actually finish this track, you literally lose the game, to another simple track that you're moving a boat on, and every time that you finally fill up your boat, you can take an action that will like give you a double work or some other bonus, some points, or an extra action card for the round, which are usually more powerful cards. However, you only get to take that action once before somebody else will take it. It ends up resulting in you're like sort of trying to take actions on the board based on what you want to do, but then also you're like, ooh, that card's really, really, really good for this round. It's got a really great action on it, and it gets me a match or something. So it gives you interesting decisions. But of these 7 spots on the board, they're all very, very simple mini games. The traveling section of the board is just like get bonuses. The jade section of the board is pay an increasing number of workers to get this jade, which is just set collection. The Great Wall is try to fill up a bar so that you can score points, but other players are also going there. And anyway, that's pretty much the way that it goes. There is a very well executed tiebreaker track called the influence track. Because the tiebreaker track, the reason I think it's well executed is because this game is very well balanced to where many times you will be using that influence track as a tiebreaker, right, Trent?
Yes.
There was one round in which we had all 4 players at the table had exactly 3 matches for the dice that I had previously mentioned, and Trent won because he was the highest on the influence track. So that was cool. There is one interesting spot on the board that I do quite like, that where you have decrees that are like sort of your technologies that you can get, and you're going to be playing with 2 of 3 different levels. So there's 6 total, and in the box there's 15 you choose from. So you're only playing with 6 out of 15, which is pretty cool. But overarching, this is a game about that card play. And it all makes sense thematically because you're giving gifts. That's the way that this emperor in this time period got around the sort of anti-corruption laws. It was a very corrupt previous emperor that was very much a dictator. And so there was a reformist, but the practices needed to somehow continue to exist. That was the oil that greased the political dealings of the era. And so you're using these cards to sort of give gifts. And you can do other things to grease the wheels to try to get to take these actions. But overarching, it's a euro that has a cool card play system that I've never quite seen done before, where I'm trying to balance the actions I want to take together with the cards I want to acquire, which will then give me actions in the future. And on top of that, I'm trying to assemble a team of cards that in a way kind of reminds me like the game Raw from Reiner Knizia, where I'm trying to get like the right, tokens. And I end up with like, in Raw, it's only 3 tokens, but here it's 4, and they're different values that I'm trying to match with an arbitrarily rolled number. So a very interesting Euro to try, and I tried to say Euro as many times as possible so that way nobody's confused about what you're going to get from this game. But I'm looking forward to trying some of the extra stuff that comes in the box, like the bonus tokens, and maybe trying some of the more open setups and whatnot. Because I do think that the most interesting decisions you get from this game are when you have like an action you want to take because you've been forming a strategy around a certain place on the board, but then what the other players do make you like enticed to do things. And I think that that's like that next level of Gugong where you're like you're not just taking cards based on what other players like put as carrots in front of your face, but you're also putting the carrots in front of other players' faces based on whether or not you want players to take an action. You can incentivize or take away any benefits by playing a credit card in a spot or a high numbered card that just is tough to beat and doesn't give you an action. So I really think that Gugong is extremely well balanced, a very cool system. I don't think that as far as like the sum of its parts, not all those parts on the board are incredibly compelling. I do think that like the movement along the river is okay. The Jade, I did that in my last game. I really focused on Jade, and I felt like at the end of it, I just had a bunch of points, and that was it, which was cool. I maxed out how many points I could get, but it just wasn't quite there. I was very competitive for it. I honestly think, Trent, you won this game, not because of any spot on the board, but because you just dominated getting that 3 points. I think you got 3 points for matching all rounds but one.
So I got it every round, I think. I think I got it
all
every
4
round.
rounds. And and our scores were tied. It was like 34, 32, 30, 28. It was like all within like an 8-point spread and not super high scores. So, and we were doing very different things. I think it's a very well balanced game. There is kind of like a mini expansion in the box in the form of bonus travel tokens that allow you to sort of follow other players and would add I don't want to say even more interaction because that gets you to thinking this is interactive. I mean, the main interaction is trying to compete over each of these spots on the board. Usually is somewhat competitive, but then that overarching like I'm trying to get the most. So it's like a set collection aspect I've never seen done. But that extra expansion looks to add something pretty cool. The decrees, while not super different from each other, seem like different enough to keep me wanting to come back to it. And it's just an overall beautiful production with metal pieces, screen printed wooden tokens for like 40 something pieces in the game. Pretty sweet all in all. Gugong.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It is. As I think I mentioned this to my wife after I played it. I said that was like the definitive Euro game. It felt to me exactly what a Euro game. It's when I think of a Euro game in my head, I think of something like Gugong.
Mm-hmm.
It's
an oiled machine,
example of a Euro game. Yes.
I can't disagree with that. Not at all. Andy, stay away. Don't even come to this game. Like, don't even.
Gugong El Magnifico or whatever.
Oh, I suppose you could. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Lorenzo's pretty Euro game, but I agree with Trent. I'd say try it though because it is, except for Andy. Andy, not you, but everybody else try it because this interesting system of gift giving that is thematically based it's what keeps me interested in wanting to show more people about the game at its core. So that was our review section. And before we transition, I'd like to just quickly give a shout out to my high school game group, which we just met today. And it was a fantastic experience. There was PC gaming going on. There was Nintendo Switch gaming going on. There was tabletop gaming going on. No collectible card games today, but that's just because there wasn't an extra deck that was brought. But anyway, it was just an absolute blast. So shout out to Bobby for bringing his Switch and for playing Brawlhalla with several people. Shout out to Carter, who's here in the chat with us right now. He played the Alien in Not Alone, which is a game that was actually reviewed by Keegan on our last episode. And Not Alone is that one versus many where it's a hidden movement game. And everybody at the table, it really enjoyed the experience. And I would say that even though Carter did not actually win the game as the alien, and get all of his friends, as I like to call them, to stay on the planet with him, I'm pretty sure that you entertained that entire table pretty well, Carter. So a shout out to you as well. And thanks for making such an awesome game group experience happen at Gamers Club at the high school where I teach. Now, oh man, speaking of running a game group, this is a topic that I've been it's been incubating in my brain for quite a while. So if it's terrible, I'm the one to blame. The buck stops here. We're going to be talking about how there are sort of pilots and passengers and how these are hats that we don. And sometimes we need to be a pilot. Sometimes we need to be a passenger. Sometimes we want to be a pilot, but are stuck as a passenger. And sometimes the exact opposite happens, where we want to just sit back and let somebody run an experience, and we're forced to continue to try to manage everybody's rules, questions, and whatnot. And what I'm referring to, I think that the metaphor of a plane flight works in terms of how a gaming experience happens. You have to do a bunch of prep work to get off the ground. Sometimes you even have to do things like show people how to buckle their seat belts, because you just know if you don't, there's going to be something. And if it's too late, you just can't say anything. When you do finally get off the ground and in the air, if somebody says, I need to go, it becomes a really big issue, because you got to find a way to land the plane and hopefully be able to make that happen if somebody has an emergency. And I think that there's many different roles that are involved in a gaming experience that can all sort of make some sort of a metaphorical comparison that relate to this sort of plane flight idea. So let me start with a core idea of pilots and passengers. Whenever I'm looking as the game night organizer to try to best facilitate the game night, I am hoping that I can find the right group to be able to experience everything that has already been mentioned, or that is currently a potential experience that could happen. And there are many people who come into the game night as a pilot that is looking to fly their own plane. By the way, David out in Utah, who's previously of our local game group and a guest on the show, you're welcome. David is a pilot, so you get your episode here. Anyway, the pilot that I'm talking about would be like, for example, when I mentioned this, the initial accusation was like, oh, so you mean Andy? And Andy, I question, would you like to try to explain why one might have thought of you when thinking of a pilot in a game group?
I don't know. Like, I tend to, I tend not to have a lot of patience for the, which game will we play game at game night.
Mm-hmm.
So we would plus, I don't know, my tastes are somewhat specific. So when I tend to learn a game to teach, I don't because I tend to play the heavier eclectic games, I tend not to have a lot of games in my brain at once. I have one or two, so those are the ones I kind of push for. But I don't know, in the game group, if we often get to the thing where it's like, what are we going to play? I don't know. What do you want to play? I don't know. I'm just I'm teaching this. And I pull out a game and just go start setting it up. But I'm perfectly happy to play a lot of games as well. It's just that it often was for quite a while, me and Joe were never able to play games together because we were always the two that should be like, I will teach this. I'm going to go set this up now. And so we ended up being that. But there's been a lot of times where someone's like, oh, we want to play this. I'm like, all right. I mean, so yeah, I can be kind of forceful in that, but that's part of just me being an extrovert, and my game time is my public gaming time is so little. I don't want to waste it mulling over what game needs to be played for 20 minutes. So I'll often push it in a direction, and if I push it in a direction, it's usually a role I'm feeling comfortable in, and I feel more comfortable as a teacher of games than I do a learner of games.
Oh yeah.
I
see that.
Yeah, my son's very similar because we both have just slightly slower processing speeds. I'll get things, but it often takes me a little longer. So if I'm trying to learn the rules of a game and learn the strategy of a game at the same time, I can get very frustrated with the experience. So I tend to just, if no one else does anything, I will tend to push it in the direction I'm most comfortable with, which is teaching a game I know how to teach. but that being said, I'll play lots of games. Probably my only like absolute hard passes right now would be not even party games, though. That's pretty close. But yeah, if somebody's like, I got this lovely new quiz game, I'd be like, I gotta go to the bathroom. It's gonna be a while.
So
tiny epic quiz.
Oh yeah, if it's got Tiny Epic on it, I'm running for the frickin' door. Like that's
Kickstarter Deluxe Edition.
When I said this, so thanks for kind of explaining, Andy, how one might view you as, if there's this idea of a pilot exists, then maybe you'd be one. When I mentioned pilot, TC, you are quick to confess.
Oh yeah, well, I've been running Keyforge tournaments every other week, so I've been piloting this thing into the ground. I'm the one organizing them and getting people together and actually doing the thing. But the reason I tend to be pilot is I'm just so enthusiastic anyway. I have like at any given point in time 5 games I absolutely need to play. So it's like, hey, I got these games. Here's your choice of 5. And they're like, but what? But no, I hear these are really good. And this one's really good. And this one really, but this one looks really good. And it's like, yeah. So my enthusiasm tends to, because I'm an extrovert in a lot of ways, and I just like, dude, and I just talk it up. And then usually 9 times out of 10, they're like, dude, that wasn't as good as you said it was. Like, no, yeah, you're right. It was better. But, but that's just me. And I've had to take a backseat a lot of the times because, there's people in our game group that want to play their game, but they don't speak up about it. And it's not because they don't want to. They just don't feel comfortable doing it. So, I got to be sure to give the floor a bit, just ask like, hey, is there any games you guys want to play? And then usually get like, yeah. But most of the time I get this, and I'm sure you get this too. Oh, I don't know. What do you want to play? I'm like, we're always playing what I want to play. Come on, pick something. Because I
feel like stress and pressure sometimes.
Yeah.
That's what used to happen to me. Like I noticed I was often getting games I wanted played, but other people. So I tried like backing off, being like, I don't know what you want to play. And then like after 5 freaking minutes of sitting there, I'm like, okay, we're playing this. You had your opening.
And I think that's the kind of reason I like legacy games so much in a lot of ways is that, you have to play it a certain amount of times. It's like, okay, we're going to play this for a while. Oh, good. We don't have to decide. We got Pandemic Season 1. We're going to be playing this at least 8 times. So good. I don't have to argue about it.
Nice. No, I get what you're saying, TC. So would you just really quickly, I have a question to sort of pick your brain to figure out more, like not getting to actually play with you. I want to hear like, how do you end up going from Meltwater to Teotihuacan? Where in the itinerary does that come up? Is this is this like you being a passenger in multiple experiences, or are you being the pilot in some? And
I think it's just the product of being available.
Okay, so that I would say, dude, that right there, that idea that like I'm available, I'm here to play. That to me is a passenger. I don't want to say this to say that pilots are good and passengers are bad. As a matter of fact, there is a need for both. But keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, how that happened was I showed up early for a game night, so I was like, hey, Steven brought Meltwater. So I'm like, yeah, let's try that. And he pushed it. He's like, dude, I got this game. I'm like, dude, I've heard about this from my podcast guys. Let's give it. And we finished it. And like game night was starting at 6 o'clock. And so by the time it was kicking up, another guy showed up. Was like, hey, you want to play this game with us? I'm like, sure. Yeah, let's go. So yeah, I think the biggest part of being in any game group or any game night is just being flexible and open and willing to try different stuff, even though it's not entirely in your wheelhouse. Because I know personally, it means a lot if you can sit down and play a game with someone that's not entirely in your wheelhouse, but it's a game they enjoy quite a bit. And if you can just at least sit with them and play it and enjoy playing the game with them, even though you may not actually like the game, that goes a long way. So,
yeah, sure. Yes, you need to be a passenger sometimes. Sometimes first of all, it's nice to be able to relax, right, a little bit. So you sometimes do get a little bit of that reduced stress where but for Andy, it's increased stress because he mentioned hating learning new games. But TC, I exactly see what you're saying. And also it does feel kind of like you're paying back a favor.
Yeah. And then, like I was saying before, I didn't really, my first game of that, what is that game called? I can never pronounce it. Whatever. That Aztec game with the dice you don't roll.
Teo, that's what everyone's doing.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have the best first impression of it. And like I said, going from Meltwater to that probably wasn't the best idea. And they were two entirely different games. So I was like, I'm kind of iffy on this. But I didn't let my disappointment with the game, I didn't say that out loud. The guy was like, did you enjoy the game? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely play this with you again. And I've played with a lot of people and they seem to be podcast personalities in particular, that if they play a game they don't like, they have no problem telling you to their face that the game blows. And that is just like, really? I just wasted my time after one time and you guys don't like it and you already wrote it off? Fine.
Yeah. I think that can happen. And I know that I've said that in the past. I've been that person. Andy still is that person. Trent's better about it. I think I learned from Trent that like that can really upset. You can feel upset when that type of thing happens. And I learned from Trent how to not say that. And I've had people who are very new to the hobby take a very, very strong view on a game that is a game of mine that they played, even if I wasn't there for the experience. I've heard people say things like that game should just go straight in the trash, which is like, okay.
And the thing I usually do,
like
if like the people I'm playing with don't have a fairly tough skin and can deal with it, I usually just do a little bit of trash talking. My favorite moment was in Levi Moat, the guy who designed Horizons up at GameStorm a few years ago. Started playing it, and he knew the game, and he was just wiping the floor with all of us. I just started going off. I was like, this is dumb. This is broken. This is the worst space game I've ever played. This is a bunch of crap. I just started, because I knew Levi had a slightly tougher skin than most people, and he was like ignoring me. And then at the end of it, he was asking everyone what they thought, and I was like, no, I actually think it was a pretty good game. And he didn't know me at that point, and he lost it. I think he nearly fell to the floor laughing. And I was like, dude, it's like, yeah, I knew you could take it. So, it depends who I'm with, but
yeah. The dynamic is a very important part. And I think that like, it's tougher for many, like, I mean, some people are just, the dynamic is always fairly similar. Here in our chat, we've got, some people who have some fairly set groups where, like they're the pilot and they're always the pilot, right, Murr? Others where you go to a place and you're one of many pilots. And you do need to have like that sort of room full of passengers to be able to accommodate all the pilots. Trent, I haven't heard you say much about this because honestly, you're the enigma when I think about this. I feel like you're sort of that example of somebody who's both the pilot and passenger, depending on situation.
Yeah, I'm usually default to being a passenger. I only will be a pilot if I feel like there's literally not a game being played, and I'm like, all right, we're playing this. Other than that, I'm happy to be a passenger most of the time and fill in when people need someone to fill in a game.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how I usually play it.
It's, to me, that's a really, like, it's, so when I think of passengers, I think a lot of, like my brain immediately, if I focus on negative, will think about people that I can't rely on. But that's not the case with you, Trent. Like, just because you appreciate being a passenger, I would say that in general, somebody who appreciates being a passenger yet brings a depth of understanding of gaming to make teaching easy, to make the experience not suffer from the obvious no-nos of what can really, taint an experience for the rest of the people there. I think that you know how to avoid those type of things. And I think that the fact that you're willing to sort of, go with the flow can be extremely it can relieve stress from me, who's like, I feel like I'm like a pilot who's like, I'm not even the pilot. I'm like the air traffic controller. If I'm running a game night, like I'm sitting up there like, let's not run planes into each other. Let's try to make sure everybody gets their chance at the runway and all the passengers get in planes that they're not going to be, wanting out of, because that's pretty complicated. There's only so many parachutes. And honestly, like,
I know, needing parachutes is like it's almost a different topic.
Missing a door and has like crates of chickens where the passenger's supposed to sit, and
yeah, it's crazy. Like, I never thought of it like that, because I feel like what happened though is this last Sunday, I ended up in a situation where I was kind of, by my own design, the odd man out that was teaching a game and then just sort of letting it happen. And I, like, people would think like something negative about that, but it was so refreshing. It was like I was able to just focus on teaching and focus on making the experience positive, because that's what I care most about, more than anything else. I don't care if I win. I don't care about any of those things. I just want to make it the best experience it could possibly be to give that game the best chance it could have. If I'm going to talk about a game, especially if I'm ever going to be critical, if I don't focus on that, like, holy crap, like I'm letting my own need for validation and winning, and, like, especially if I'm competing in a game, it can be like stressful. And I see very frequently the person teaching the game, in my experience, whether it be Trent, Andy, TC, I don't have any firsthand experience with you, but I would not be surprised to see you like something happens to you and you're like, I don't really care if I win or lose. I just want to make sure this is a fun game. And I felt like not actually having my own presence in the game to impact my ability to explain different elements. Like, if I'm playing a game and I explain a rule at a certain interval, I'm inherently changing what thoughts are going through the players' heads. I feel like I've contaminated potentially that experience. I think other people can sort of, other players that are savvy enough, that have played enough games, will understand that. Like, it really could, because you're explaining the game. I mean, my nickname is Joe by the way. So
Joe
literally,
by the way.
Yeah, it's like, oh, by the way, I'm going to explain this rule to you because I'm looking at you and thinking, I really hope you're not going to do that, because the rules don't say that you can do, like, they say that you can't do that, but I don't remember saying it very clearly. So, like, that's a Joe by the way moment. It's like when you've spent the last 3 rounds planning for an action that you can't actually do. You're welcome. Don't you love being informed? So, but not like being able to be there.
Like, I was gonna say, but that's like why they have that, also the stereotype of if you teach the game and then like lose god awfully, they call it the good teacher. Because you were worried about how that everyone else knew what they were doing, you didn't focus on your own play that much, is kind of where that comes from, particularly in the heavy game world, where like you really, if you're going to be competitive, you really need to be focusing on it. So if you're teaching the game, like, you tend not to do that well. And, for example, like, I remember, I think it was when Trent, you brought your wife and we did 1889. Yeah. And like, I came up like skunked, like I had crap, but that's because most of the time I was focused on making sure, that Sarah knew what she was doing and and trying to coach or back off based on what she needed. But I was worried about that rather than I was playing like optimally. And I think that's normal in sort of the heavy game world too. If you're kind of being more the pilot there and trying to make sure that the game's going well, then you tend to kind of crap the bed score-wise when it's all done.
That game went well, by the way, as an intro. She now like appreciates them, wants to play them more, and describes 18xx as a rabbit hole. So,
oh god, it is. Yes.
or you could be running a tournament and trying to make sure everyone's playing right and not perform very well. That's happened to me quite a few times, because it's hard to concentrate on playing your deck well in Keyforge when 15 people are coming to you asking for a rules clarification. So I can definitely see how that's the case too.
My wife's done. She's like moderated like chess tournaments and stuff like that in the local area. So,
yeah, it can, like, I've been in situations where I was supposed to be a passenger, and the person that was the pilot at the table was also very much invested in their own game, and that has like led to me having a negative, just a sour taste left in my mouth. I've noticed that before. I've been that person many times, probably way more times than I've ever been the victim of that type of behavior. And I don't want to say that it's really negative behavior, but it's just kind of like one of those things that's a nuanced, like a very, like something you wouldn't even expect to avoid, something that, it's not like one of those things that has a caution, avoid this, not like, AP, which is so clearly obvious, like, don't take forever on your turn. Like, it's one of those things, it's like a next level, like, if you're teaching the game, everything you say is not only going to try to inform players, but it's also going to, you can use that teaching ability to try to sway players towards or away from certain game systems. And whether or not you let your own competitive nature, if you have a competitive nature, like in fact, or, whatever, like sort of, be a part of that, it can really like result in some strange dynamics at a table. I think that there are beyond, like, just to continue this metaphor a little bit, I think that there are many other roles beyond just pilot and passenger. And I do think that, like, when it comes to being a passenger, even those of us that are pilots, most of the time appreciate being a passenger in many experiences, you know, especially if somebody's got a game they're really wanting to play. You know, when somebody walks in with a single game, especially if it's one you don't really know much about, it can be very interesting just to sit back and see, you know, like, what type of experience is this player going to have? If I was ever going to play a game with UTC, I know for a fact I would be like, hold on, I'm going to buckle my seatbelt just in case.
Hang on, get your 5-point harness on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you need. You need to, like, have one of those installed on my chair. Just that way I won't be, you know, make sure that, like, I practice my reach, and I need to see how far your neck is from my actual grip, because
I could honestly say a game with you would have a whole lot of different prerequisites and expectations than with anybody else.
I feel like that would be just setting up all of these things for, like, this is what I want to see Joe have to deal with.
Yeah,
just like check down all the lists.
Yeah. I actually, when you were saying there were different roles for TC, I'm like, oh yeah, so TC's role would be in that episode in the Twilight Zone when they're on the plane. TC would be the creature, like, driving William Shatner insane as they, like, tear the engine apart.
And no one else can see it but Joe.
Yeah, TC's the nanovirus. He's like some sort of a reason that, like, I have some weird eye defect that makes it so only I can observe TC's like malevolence. Because I know what to expect. Yeah.
So just to go with this analogy, have you ever been in a situation like in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom where the pilots have jumped out and you have to run to the cockpit and you don't exactly know how to pilot the plane, and you're asking the person, do you know how to fly this? You're like, no, do you? Have you ever guys been in a situation where the person who, like, was supposed to teach it, like, completely bailed and you guys had to, like, take over, like, at the last minute and try to salvage the whole thing?
No, I'm an educator. That's like a daily occurrence.
Because my very first play of Terraforming Mars, someone got it ahead of time before it came out, and this was like this big teaching thing, and this person was supposed to teach it, and they basically just set it up and said, here's the rules, the cards explain everything you need to do, bye.
Oh, nice.
Okay, I guess it's up to me now. Hi guys, I have no idea how to do this.
I think that kind of almost happened once at our game night, but after 3 minutes of realizing I'm in over my head, I'm like, let's just back this up and blitz.
It's easy. Just read your player aid.
It was just so funny because there was, like, so much excitement, right? Because we all wanted to see what it was, and it was like, okay, and so I was like, okay, I guess I'll look at the rule book. Unfortunately, I had another guy I was playing with who was really good at reading rule books and understanding it, and between the two of us, we kind of got it going. But man, we almost hit the mountain, and we barely got out in time with that raft and slid down the mountain. You know?
Indiana Jones style, huh?
Yeah.
Nice. So, Andy knows where I'm going with this. If I say that there needs to be a flight inspector, like a plane inspector, before you get a game out, because sometimes people will open a game and say, let's play this, and then you realize that all the cards are in shrink and need to be sorted. And yeah, at that point, like, it was nasty. And actually, I'm talking about the same game that I was referring to for this last Sunday, Cerebria. But Andy, you were so good-natured about it, and I think that was an example where you were like, you took this, like, okay, I'm not only going to be a passenger, but I'm going to, like, actively participate in making sure that this plane gets to where it's supposed to go. And that was really appreciated. Sorry for that.
So Andy played Cerebria after I left?
No. This was a previous game, probably a month ago, that Andy played Cerebria, and it was before I had the game sorted. That was the second play that my copy of Cerebria has got. Okay,
misunderstood. I thought that he played Cerebria after I left, so I was like, okay.
Thanks, guys. I wanted to play that.
That would have been a real long one. Yeah, it's really, really interesting game. And if you notice, I haven't reviewed it yet, but that's because there's a lot more there that I want to see before I have anything to say about it. We've only played I would say that there's like 10 degrees of complexity in the game.
Look at the camera, Joe. Look at the camera.
Nice. I see some shrink on there, Trent. You could totally I would love to see if you ever wanted to explore what deck building is like there, Trent. I feel like you'd be the guy to do it. But anyway, because you can actually pre-construct decks. So But with Cerebria, like this last Sunday, I was just straight up that, like the pilot that then, let all the passengers, I was the pilot that was only flying there so that I could then fly back home in the same day, if that makes sense. Like I got everybody there and then I didn't get to enjoy the place. Instead, I got to see like them enjoying it. And that to me was such a better, more fulfilling experience than had I had to actually try to invest myself in it as well. I think that this is maybe even best in a team game environment because like having the person that's responsible for teaching the game, because I remember this happening in a very weird dynamic with the game 1775, which is kind of like Risk, except it's 2v2, where you got like British versus the Americans sort of for 1775. Anyway, it's so strange because the person teaching the game sort of needs to take a diplomatic stance of like, I'm not that concerned with winning. But then if you're like also on a team with somebody who needs you to be competitive to not just get feeling like you're just being exterminated like cockroaches, like it can be like a very frustrating experience where as that passenger, you feel like you're literally on a plane with a pilot that wants to do nothing but nosedive. So
yeah, but that's my general play style. A passenger or a pilot,
nosedive, the Andy play style. Instead of nosediving, I prefer to circle the drain. That's Andy just goes straight through.
Yeah, we're like,
guys, this is what it's like to play container with Andy.
Just Andy's like, I'm gonna see what this does.
Once.
Yes.
Apparently, I did successfully create what I called as wall harbor because I kept lowballing everyone's stuff and I tanked the economy. Like it took several rounds. Like people were bringing in like 5 container boatloads and getting it for $5 because that was how little money was circulating at the time.
Yeah, it can certainly, like, that's a game where players have so much impact that, like, when Andy chooses to nosedive, you realize that Andy's actually tied to you, and you're all tethered together, and now you're all nosediving because of Andy.
Yeah, but I bet you none of you guys has pushed your wife into a brothel.
Yeah.
In a board game.
What?
It was this really bizarre game called Sienna, where you upgrade your last as a banker, and there's this house of, I don't know, it's like these courtesans in there. And throughout the game, you can seed it with these cubes. And if you hit in there, you get pushed in there, then you lose like all this money to pay them off. And I set it up so that Steven was supposed to go in there, but he had some shenanigans, and it ended up pushing my wife into it. And she wasn't too pleased about that.
Jeez.
Talk about that was a pretty big nosedive. That was a pretty big nosedive in a game.
Goodness.
That was like Star Trek Catan, where my wife used a special power, which is if you don't get any resources on a roll, you take one of your choice. And I reminded her to use that card because she didn't get any, and then it got to my turn, and I had the card that forces people to trade with you.
The Monopoly card, basically.
Like, oh God, the best move for me is to take that thing that I reminded you to take.
Would you mind taking that? Because, okay, now that you've taken it, I'm taking that.
Oh God, like my wife's a pacifist, and I thought she was going to murder me that night.
Well, you could always just say a card laid's a card played and do the whole chess thing where it's like, nope, you made the decision.
Does it hate the game, not the player?
I did follow up. We played Lords of Waterdeep, and I hit her with 3 mandatory quests in a row. So I don't know what I was thinking.
Did you not want her to ever play that game again, Andy? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Just maybe. Well,
yeah,
so that
was a rough.
I feel like there's also sort of like, there's a lot more unexplored territory here. I do think that like that flight is something that I've been noticing a lot. Every game feels like it gets off into the air, and it's really something magical. It's just something where you're like, holy crap, are we really like to the point where like we've advanced to this point where we can carry this social experience together within the confines of interaction that are laid by the game. And I think that these are things that really I don't know. To me, what's magic about tabletop? So I could have talked about the in-flight entertainment, which maybe TC, maybe you are the passenger that is sitting there coughing the flu onto every player, or maybe you are the in-flight entertainment that nobody can take their eyes off of.
I feel like I'm like the person who the stewardess who has to like entertain by showing you how you buckle your belt, but doing it like in an entertaining way. You do it like this and this and this, and then have to go up and make sure everybody's okay. And then sometimes I just like walk out because I'm tired of it.
You could be that person that takes a dump in the bathroom, you know,
or light a cigarette in the bathroom. Like, oh God,
oh no, no tampering with the smoke detectors in the lavatories. Come on, these are vocabulary that you only hear the flight attendants say. We don't call them lavatories.
Lavatories.
In the lavatory. Federal law prohibits tampering with smoke detectors in lavatories. So, there's a lot though, you know, and anyway, it's all just part of what can make a really incredible experience happen. So we all, I think, can appreciate the different roles, you know, and how each role. Each active role, like try to get an active role for yourself and try to make sure that every player in your group has an active role. I would say that from a teaching perspective, you know, like making people a part of your team and making people a part of what's, you know, feel like they're responsible for the outcome in advance, like really leads to changes in behavior. You know,
I spent the whole episode trying to figure out what to describe what I am, and I decided I'm an exit row passenger.
So you're there, but you're also the hero. If
I can take charge of complete disasters and get everyone out of the plane.
Nice. Take care of that.
That's your superpower.
Yeah, I'm an exit row passenger is what I am.
This is true. Like when there's tension, usually Trent is the like, hey everybody, we're here for fun, but you know, has a better way of putting it than that. So I've seen it happen before, Trent. I think that's a good way of putting it. The exit row passenger. Yeah.
Joe's getting better. He used to be the person who consumed too much alcohol and thinks they're entitled to first class.
The drunk pilot. Oh boy. Well, you could be any number of the things that we talked about. Maybe you have an identity that borrows from many different aspects here. And maybe you feel like, well, I'm just whatever I need to be. And if that's the case, please come join our game group, because we need more people that are just willing to roll with the punches and do whatever it takes. But you know what? We're all just here to have fun. And this has been a great time talking about this topic with you guys. So thank you for entertaining just a thought that I'd been tossing around in my head for a little while. And that is the topic of this episode of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. Moving along to hype. Let's see if we can make it out of this age of flight and back into the age of iron and rust with Andy.
Nice. That was almost a good transition.
Well, now that you've said that, Andy.
Okay. Anyway.
You could be the passenger that mocks the pilot. There you go.
You know, I thought that was my role on the podcast. Oh, okay. But yeah, so I'm hyping Time of Crisis, The Age of Iron and Rust, which is the expansion coming out for Time of Crisis. This is easily probably my most anticipated game. Time of Crisis is one like I never got to play nearly enough compared to what I ultimately wanted to play it. It was also one of those ones that like I just kind of got, but I didn't know what to expect, and really fell in love with the game. And I'm really, really looking forward to the expansion coming out, because it's like going to double the card types and just open up these new strategies. But more importantly, that will help solve the problem of feeling like I never could play Time of Crisis as much as I wanted. They're adding in GMT bots, so you can just play the dang thing solo like a coin game and actually play the game. So I don't know. I'm really interested in this one. I know I saw an announcement that was saying once they get the current ones they're shipped out, they'll start charging and preparing that one for shipment. So I'm really, really stoked to get my hands on that. Hopefully should be sometime in February.
And not to mention that if you have a first edition, you can also get a deeper box.
Yeah, I ordered that.
Yeah, just be
Really?
if you're going to get your extra cards, because my box does not hold everything. That box probably won't hold anything, but you can get a 3-inch deeper box.
Yeah,
they're doing that with the actual
I'm
Time of
pretty
Crisis. They're doing that with the
Yeah.
Time of Crisis like artwork on it and everything to make it like Time of Crisis themed, or is it just because?
bigger box?
Okay, cool.
Yeah, they did the same thing with
yeah.
what was that? Triumph and Tragedy. You just get a bigger box for it.
Yeah, because I'm usually pretty good at like storage solutions. In Time of Crisis, like there is no extra
There's
space.
no
in
way,
my
yeah.
box.
And I don't even know how an expansion would get in there, but yeah, just FYI.
Yeah, no, I ordered that too because I want to get it all in one box.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Well, I would love to try this one, and I love the name here, Age of Iron and Rust. Like that's like we're talking about the downfall of the fall of Rome, right? I mean, the final like when Rome finally collapses.
Yeah, I thought that game was too chaotic, and then I listened to the History of Rome podcast, but I got to that part. I'm like, no, that's all pretty thematically appropriate stuff.
Yeah.
It'd be like everything's going smooth as long as the emperor doesn't die. Wait, you're kidding me? The emperor died? You son of a!
So that was Time of Crisis, Age of Iron and Rust, the expansion, which you can get together with a bigger box because the box was not very big to start with, barely housed the game.
And they are doing a reprint of the base game with it too. So if you want to get your hands on all of that, this is a good time.
And I would highly recommend it if you were at all interested. I know that I'm looking forward to trying the new content from the expansion together to see, like what direction it's heading in, because it's certainly a game that I find interesting. Not exactly the one, like I have some qualms with it, which we've discussed before. We're not going to need to pick open those scabs. But I look forward to seeing what Time of Crisis has to offer. And I definitely understand what people appreciate about this game. I see it as a game that, while not for me, is certainly an accomplishment in game design. Now let's go ahead and talk about in a very quirky game that I certainly hope. I mean, Trent, I'm as excited about this game as you are, only I'm going to wait to hear what you have to say about it once you've played it. Anyway, without any further ado, tell us about, the next from the Stuffed Fables line.
Yes. So as I mentioned in the podcast in the past, my family and I had a lot of fun playing Stuffed Fables. Stuffed Fables is a board game where you essentially the book is the board game, and you play through these adventures in this book, and each page in the book is like a chapter in this adventure, and it's like its own little small board game that you play. And then each subsequent adventure you play is another chapter in the larger book. So it comes off as very much as a storytelling game, but the thing is with Stuffed Fables, it's clearly geared towards children. I mean, it's playable by adults, but it's something I had fun playing with my own children, and it's one that it's mechanically simplified so that I think kids can handle it. There's still decisions to be made, don't get me wrong, and there's still some gameplay to it, but it's simplified. So Comanauts is the second in the series, but the same designer, Jerry Hawthorne, same publisher, Planet Games, same idea that you have a central book. But this time, the mechanics are more complex, and the story's like targeting adults, whereas Stuffed Fables was very much a story about... having played through it, I would say it's a story about a child starting to grow up a little bit. Yeah. This one's about someone delving into someone's memories and revisiting their life as a life experience all the way through. Mm-hmm. And it's mechanically targeting adults and thematically targeting adults, whereas I would say Stuffed Fables was definitely thematically targeting children and somewhat mechanically targeting children. So
kind of like a Pixar way, though. I think that it's got those double plays of... It's got like the multiple levels like a Pixar does, because I thought Stuffed Fables was interesting.
Yeah, Stuffed Fables is... I mean, it's great for a game group, and there are definitely hooks there for the parents and adults playing it. There are things going on that like evoke some deeper thought, but I mean, it's a game I could have no qualms playing with my kids, both mechanically and thematically.
Certainly,
and it generated some good conversations with them as well when we were playing it. So Comanauts basically takes that experience and targets solely at adults. This is probably not a game, based on what I've read about it, that I would probably want to play with, especially with my younger children. It's definitely a game where it takes the storybook idea and puts it in an adult setting. The story of this is kind of like I've read the basic story, and the basic story of this is a lot like the movie Inception, and where you're basically going into a person's dreams. This person's in a coma, and you're going into their dreams, and through that, learning about their life. And I'm not sure what the goal of the game is, but that's generally the core story of it. So knowing mechanically how Stuffed Fables worked and seeing that they brought some of those mechanics forward and added a lot more, I'm very, very interested to play this game.
Yeah, to me too, dude. And honestly, like it draws on some pretty big like previous IPs that I like. I love Psychonauts from Tim Schafer. It was a video game originally released on Xbox, but it was like a platformer in which you were going through levels that were set in people's minds. Mm-hmm. And here with Comanauts, like that's basically what the whole idea is. Now, I did have a question for you. Have you played through Stuffed Fables now?
Almost all of it.
Have there been any like sort of poignant moments, or has it been pretty well benign, like unoffensive, never really get to a deeper? So I feel like that sort of Toy Story, what Toy Story does is it like sort of it almost like laments that sort of loss of innocence as you start casting your toys to the side.
Yes, but I feel it doesn't get to that for a while. I think it does a lot to build the child clearly grows up throughout Stuffed Fables. The child that you start interacting with in the first chapters may be like 2, and I would estimate that by the end the child's much older based on the experiences they go through. There's definitely, I mean, there's definitely some more poignant and thoughtful moments later on. If you've only played through the first chapter, don't judge it completely thematically by the first chapter. Mm-hmm. I think that's a mistake.
Okay. Well, I thought like there was some pretty good potential there for the first chapter. I mean, just like the idea that like it's almost like this story that I can imagine, a parent guardian sitting there opening that book wide with a kid, and then just sort of being like, let's go on a journey here, and it's like you're looking at all these different elements of the child's life, but you're seeing those sort of become almost like metaphorical representations of the challenges that they face throughout this difficult, throughout the growing up process.
I would say that later on in Stuffed Fables, it felt a lot like Toy Story at certain points, but there also was a little bit of Inside Out, if I want to give a Pixar comparison.
Oh, cool. Which I would say Cerebria is much like Inside Out, like it's. But
I mean, I think Comanauts is too. I think that they will definitely go in that direction. I'm very much looking forward to it because I liked how mechanically Stuffed Fables worked, and I had wished that there was a little bit more meat on the bones, both in terms of gameplay and to an extent story. Although the story in Stuffed Fables was fine, I wish there were some things that they could have done with it, and I think that this is going to directly scratch that itch. So I'm very much looking forward to it.
Very cool. Well, let's now move on to my hype, which is kind of a mini review, but just Yokohama. I was impressed at how simple yet deep the gameplay was with the one play that I've had so far.
Oh, yes. I love that game, by the way.
Yeah? It's like, okay, so it's got the same structure as Splendor, Trent, where it's like either 3 different or 2 of the same, but that's it. Like it's just, you know what I mean? When you start, your cubes are either 3 different things or 2 in the same spot. And then you have to move your person between places that you already have things. And then wherever you end, you stop there and then take an action, and you have a certain amount of strength in that area based on the cubes you've previously put out. So it's like every time you take an action, yes, you can, really boost this current action, but you're doing so at your own peril because you're getting essentially a 2/3 strength action, which to me is really cool. What do you think about that, Trent, with like the 3 or 2?
Yeah, I mean, Splendor annoyed me because it felt like the definitive is that it game for me. It's like, seriously, is that it? Is that what this game is? This is it? And Yokohama like takes the core of Splendor and does a lot of cool things with it. And that's why I liked it. It like took Splendor just felt like there was like 80% of a game missing.
No, I totally feel what you're saying. Like I do, because especially if you try to play Splendor's apps, like Splendor's app has a lot of like challenges. And if you look at it, really when it comes down to it, the challenges are either like easy and you win, or they're a puzzle you have to figure out. And they're kind of unfair because you just have to experiment until you figure out the actual solution. And there isn't really a core game to it that compels me either, really, at the long run. But there's a lot more here to Yokohama, and I would also say that Istanbul, it got compared originally to Istanbul because you put these pieces out, and then you've got like a president sort of piece that goes around and activates them again. But in Istanbul, I felt like that almost sort of locked you in to a certain path, whereas in Yokohama, that path is very much, you can like change it every time. And the way that you're able to sort of move around the board, other players, like the economy is super tight. And every time you want to go where another player is, you have to pay them $1, which is, like you do not have extra dollars in this game. It's not something that you do. And I agree with you, Trent. I think that I see a lot of potential here. And not only that, but it was, teaching it to my wife, she really enjoyed her first play, which is something really special. It's not something that always happens.
I will say that Yokohama is what, I don't want to say it's what I wanted Istanbul to be, but that's kind of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you see there. There's like potential here, but I feel like I'm kind of being like railroaded into a certain path.
Istanbul gets better if you're playing with both expansions and the board's a 5x5 rather than a 4x4. It's significantly better, but I still think Yokohama scratches that itch better for me.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I think Yokohama is a fantastic game that is very much like your very Euro-y style game, but does so in a really it's one of the few Japanese originated games that is as heavy as it is, and it's impressive to see how there isn't it's not a tough to learn system, but there's so much depth to it. I'm very excited to keep playing Yokohama.
This is a game that my daughter smoked me at. She really took to this one, and I was really quite surprised by that. And my biggest complaint, honestly, about the game is that I really wanted to run down like the deluxeified version of it, and it's really hard to get.
I have it.
I know you guys, and I hear you guys can correct me, but I hear there's a reprint coming up on Kickstarter, maybe. But as far as
they're doing some weird 10th anniversary TMG stuff. I'm not really clear on all, but they're definitely doing some reprints of some of their better games. I don't really know what's going on with it.
Okay. And I'm not surprised. I mean, this designer, I'm going to look it up. It's like
Hisashi Hayashi.
He did a deck building game I really enjoyed called Trains. So I rather like this designer quite a bit. And Trick of the Rails was another one he did, I believe, as well.
That's right.
And this is one of those designers I always like to keep my eye out to see what he's doing every now and then. And Yokohama really scratched a pretty neat itch, and it's a fairly unique game, and there's variability with it because the way you set it up can change quite a bit from game to game. So there was actually quite a lot to like about this thing.
Okay, apparently you can get the Yokohama Deluxeified as part of the Yokohama Dual Deluxeified campaign that's going on right now on Kickstarter.
Yeah, I'll probably have to end up backing that because I know for a fact that Kate really enjoyed that one. And if she gravitates towards a Euro, it's a thing that's few and far between. So it's something I really need to jump on. Unless it's got snake kitties. And then if it's a slam dunk.
Speaking of which, that was Murr suggested that for the Longview episodes, and I just jumped on there, Murr, and I was like, man, Kate needs to make her Longview episode debut.
Yeah, we do, and we even got the expansion for it, so yeah.
All right, get back in that dark alley. All right, well, it's now you, TC. You get to tell us about, what do you think now? After hearing Trent and Andy give their initial thoughts, what do you think about SpaceCorp?
I just want to put this on my hype because, man, I've been hearing quite a bit on this one. There is, I wouldn't say a lot of hype on it, but there is a significant amount on several heavy gamer podcasts, and I'm a little concerned about that because, when someone goes in, it's like me saying this game's great, and then they play, it's like, I don't know. And then listening to Andy talk about it, I wasn't going into it expecting an economic game at all, mainly because of the designer's pedigree. But it's just a GMT game that's bucking their design philosophy a bit, and it sounds like something that's pretty unique. So I'm still really excited to try it. I'm really curious to hear Trent and Andy hear you two talk about more as you play it, because I really think there might be something with this one, and this might be one that I'm hoping will be a evergreen title for GMT, like Twilight Struggle.
I have two things to say to that. One, it plays really well solo, really, really well solo. It has a really smart way it handles the quote AI that you're playing against. I really like it. Another thing is, and Andy was pointing this out as we were playing, I would be shocked if it's not expanded.
And I like games where space games where you explore anyway. So, and it sounds like a really unique way of doing it. So yeah, I hopefully I'll get my first impressions here in the next few weeks. Please, GMT.
SpaceCorp 2300 to 2400, the Orion or the Orion's belt or whatever.
Yeah,
it's coming. I would be shocked if it wasn't.
Yeah. Let me add one more thing, I think, that I maybe didn't mention that I think kind of leads to what you were thinking, TC, is if you want a space exploration game that is based on some kind of hard science stuff, right now you've basically got
Leaving Earth,
3 options: Leaving Earth, High Frontier, or SpaceCorp. SpaceCorp is a game you can actually get to the table with non-insane people.
Well, you guys have told me on SpaceCorp. I did not I was like, nah. And then it looked like Terraforming Mars on the table. But in this episode, you have got me to where I'm like, okay, this is something I need to investigate.
Oh no, I think it's a good, solid game, and yeah, it's not. It's stupidly insane as High Frontier for people like me, and Leaving Earth, which is a game probably honestly best played solo, and but yeah, I think if you want a space exploration game that you can play in a game night and is easily accessible by a lot of people, this is a good game for that.
Yeah, and it's on its way, and I hope I've kind of I got for my super hardcore space exploration game, I've got Space Empires 4X, so maybe this will be a nice lighter thing that I can actually get people to play.
I think Trent, you've played both of those games. I mean, I just wanted to quickly, because you made that comparison, TC. What do you think, Trent?
Space Empires 4X is way heavier.
Okay.
Way heavier.
Okay.
This one is a 2-hour game with a lot of decisions, but it feels lighter than it is. I don't know how to say it. It feels fairly light, but it's not. I don't know how to say it. Space Empires 4X feels heavy.
Okay.
I am super excited to hear your thoughts on it, TC, because I want to see what, because you're a necessary part of this. I'm forming my ideas of what the game might be, without any information to go off on. I'm not only basing an opinion on my own subjective opinions, but basing my subjective opinion on your subjective opinion.
Well, I will, as soon as the reason we haven't gotten my copy as the guy who ordered it, his credit card order got all messed up with the GMT thing, so they're having to recharge it and send it out. And I've also heard that there are some cards missing in some of the copies of the game, so I'm hopefully by the time we get our copy, it will be a complete copy. So
mine was complete. I verified it. They're numbered, so it was really easy to do.
Yeah.
Excellent.
A lot of cards, a lot of stuff in that box, it looked like.
Yeah. With it sleeved, it's pretty much chock full.
Nice. That's what I like to hear.
Well, there's 2 full boards on it, and then there's a bunch of player mats, and there's 250 cards and a lot of various bits, and of course the GMT counter sheet because it's GMT.
punch. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, before we are done here, I just wanted to give a quick shout out. Kyle, it's been really great seeing you here in the chat. Kyle's been sharing. Kyle's like a local friend that me and him have spent a lot of time in a car going to and from Gen Con together, and he knows storytelling games really well, and he shared some very cool thoughts on what we were talking about here. And so thanks for being there. Of course, Murr in our chat. John sounds like a dominant species savant. Carter giving me lots of positivity to think about with our high school game club and how he wants more. And, of course, Paul. Norm was there earlier. I don't know if he's still around, but Norm is there. If anybody, if I've missed you, I apologize. Norm apologizes for you.
Yeah, well, I think Norm will do it all for us. Don't worry about it.
So, anyway, that's this episode of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. Quickly, one more gigantic thank you to everybody who participated in the contest that we had for Donning the Purple. I loved reading your responses. A lot of people got a bunch of good pot shots in on Good, Bored, Ugly. Some references to there was a reference to Clockwork Orange. There was some bemoaning the Minnesota Vikings and their inability to find an adequate kicker. There was some very cruel and unusual punishments and some very fitting justice themed punishments. I loved reading through all of those, and I await. I'm glad that I'm not the one making the decision about who's going to win that contest. But I would not be surprised if that person reads them all there and then ends up deciding to go by like a coin flip or something. But thanks to everybody who participated. I'm sure I'm going to put something at the beginning of this episode, so to remind everybody about the status of it. But anyway, that is the end of this episode, The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. It's been great being here with you all for this time. I hope you all have I hope you all have a great week of gaming, and catch us next week on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly.